2023. Good afternoon, council, staff, guests, the viewing public, and the media. Council, does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest or a conflict of interest? Seeing none, of course, if one should arise during the meeting, you may declare it then. Item 4 is agenda additions or deletions, and we do not have any this afternoon. Item 5 is our health and safety message, which is brought to us by Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Worship. Traveling for the holidays, be prepared. Holiday travel by car has the highest fatality rate of any major form of transportation calculated per passenger miles. Follow these tips for safe travel this holiday season. Be sure your vehicle is in good running condition and is prepared for winter. Keep an emergency kit in your vehicle. Avoid drowsy driving. Get a good night's rest before departing. Leave early and plan ahead for heavy traffic. Avoid distractions while driving. Put the cell phone away. Practice defensive driving. Have a designated driver. Don't drink and drive. And be aware of weather conditions and forecasts. Postpone travel if unsafe weather or driving conditions exist.
Thank you, Councillor Cable. Item 6 is delegations. We do not have any. Item 7, business arising from the minutes. We do not have any. Item 8 is staff reports. 8.1 is report PRC 14/2023. The subject is the Center of Excellence Park Development Planning, and it's from Laura Kristen, our Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture. And I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Cable and Councillor Hudson. Laura, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Council, Mayor Patterson. So the report before you this evening, I'm going to go through just a little bit of the background. First and foremost is I would like to read what a definition is of a Center of Excellence Park, particularly for Council as well as our audience at home. So a Center of Excellence Park can be defined as a unique green space that has been developed to be multi-generational, inclusive, and is typically larger in size than a typical neighborhood park. A Center of Excellence Park, or as we have been calling it, the COE as a short form, often incorporates multiple features and amenities and are also known as the destination parks, as people often travel to these parks for the experience. So a good example of this maybe in our area would be Harrison Park in Owen Sound, for example. Okay. So this project began back in 2018 when Council adopted our Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan. And within that plan, there was recommendations and directions provided to the PRC Advisory Committee to do that kind of internal parks assessment work. That started this process. Back in 2021, Council approved a number of park assessment recommendations. And one of the recommendations are as follows: to plan for a COE or Center of Excellence Park at the Hanover Town Park location in partnership with a community organization or service club, and to facilitate and establish a memorandum of understanding with a community organization and then implement the plan. So moving forward, in June of 2022, Council approved a notice of motion directing staff to conduct a feasibility study. And what we did was we incorporated two projects. We incorporated the splash pad as well as the Center of Excellence Park, just to see if there was any synergies that we could pick up there. In November of 2022, Council approved the PRC 1622 Municipal Park Pre-Design Consulting Services and hired Plural, a landscape architect, to conduct pre-design planning for the development of a splash pad and the overarching COE park. I will note here that the priority was established within that the splash pad was to be the primary project and the COE to be the secondary or the second phase of development. In July of this year, Council received the feasibility report from Plural. They attended a delegation and provided two conceptual designs for the COE park and also outlined 3 phases of completion. So this is a multi-year project. And the council also approved report PRC 08-23 Community Splash Pad and Center of Excellence Feasibility Study Report that included as part of the recommendation that the Parks Recreation Culture Advisory Committee consider a phased implementation of the plan of the Center of Excellence Park once council had provided their direction for the proposed splash pad development. In August of 2023, council approved PRC 1223 splash pad development, supporting that Hanover Town Park as the location of the splash pad. And then this became the two projects certainly merged together to become that overall COE park plan. So that's a bit of a history. The current discussion for tonight, knowing that how big this project is, it's really crucial to gather lots of information, lots of planning in order to move this project forward from initial idea to completion. The plural report, that feasibility report, has provided council with a really a much better understanding of the project as well as the feasibility. The intent of my report tonight is to seek council support in principle to continue with the planning of the COE development at Hanover Town Park. So we know the town park has many positive elements. But as an older park, there are some challenges with the aging infrastructure. There is a lack of amenities and particularly lack of accessibility. An upgraded park will provide a multi-generational, enjoyable recreational space for our community and will attract visitors that will in turn hopefully boost our local tourism and experience economic growth in our region. But that will require a significant investment. So as per council's direction, the PRC Advisory Committee, they took a look at Plural's phased implementation, and the communication that was passed along from the committee was that phase one was primarily to ensure the success of the splash pad committee. So I want to make sure that I communicate that to council. And then the second phase and the third phase are certainly structured more around that COE versus that splash pad's success. So I have provided you with a breakdown of all three phases. It is not my intention to go through line by line each one of these items. This is the second time that you've seen it. But what I will point out is that the timing is TBD. You know, there's the first phase will be in time with the splash pad construction, but phases 2 and 3 will just be simply considered once that splash pad is complete. As far as the numbers as well that I have provided you, please keep in mind that these are just kind of conceptual estimates at this point. So actual costs will be once the phases come forward. I will take a moment to highlight in the recent Town of Hanover strategic plan, identified recreation as a priority, and that's something that we should be, you know, certainly considering. The survey highlighted 71% of respondents felt that parks, trails, playgrounds, and open spaces, are the types of projects that they'd like to see Hanover invest in tax dollars. So at this time, there are no financial implications. Recognizing that a project of this size will need a significant investment from corporate sponsorships, grants, and community fundraising. The recommendation before you this evening is that PRC 1423 Center of Excellence Park Development be received, and that council provide that support in principle to direct staff and the PRC Advisory Committee to continue with that phased planning for the COE development at Town Park.
Thanks, Laura. We have Candice here. Okay, council comments, questions? Councillor Sacco.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for your report, Laura. So when you were reviewing things tonight, forgive me if I've forgotten, but in 2021, it says that in the little quote that you have, that in partnership with a community organization, that was one of the approved recommendations. Can you tell me if you had any success at all in making a connection with any of our organizations in town of?
Through you, not at this time. So that's something that will need to come in future.
Does that mean you haven't asked them, or does that mean they've turned us down so far?
At this point, they have not been asked. Being a splash pad is that priority. So we'll certainly see where this develops.
Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the report, Laura. It's really an exciting time for Parks and Recreation as we look forward to potential opportunities that are available at the Hanover Town Park space. My preference at this time would be to focus on phase 1 of the development. So that includes the splash pad and those ancillary amenities that make the splash pad function well. So I do want to make sure that the splash pad has all the equipment that it would need in order to be a success. So things like the crosswalk that would go across 7th Ave to make that a safe crossing for pedestrians, parking, lighting, seating, and shade. Because we do know that some of those items were highly recommended in the survey from Town of Hanover residents that completed the splash pad survey. The total estimated cost at this time is around $800,000, of which a portion will be offset by the splash pad committee through their fundraising efforts, and hopefully other costs could be offset by any grants that the town can apply for. But at this point in time, I would be in favor of proceeding with phase 1 and then planning for phase 2 and 3 to put that on hold until phase 1 is complete and all costs are accounted for. And so I suppose after we hear from other people, Your Worship, I would want to make an amendment to the motion that is on the floor.
Okay. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the report, Laura. I really didn't see anything in there that was really time sensitive. And you know, based on our current fiscal challenges that we talked about a week ago here, to be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised and a little disappointed we're hearing this tonight, because we were given or we gave direction that we were supposed to look for every possible way of savings going forward to make next year's tax increase somewhat more palatable. So I guess I'm questioning why we're talking about this tonight, why we aren't making this part of our budget deliberations down the road, you know, within the next month or so. And, you know, for those reasons, I really can't support this motion tonight. And I'd ask that it be deferred until our budget deliberations.
Thank you. It certainly is captured as part of the capital, but like the deliberations for budget that is coming up, it has been recorded on the 5-year plan that has been presented to council. And I agree, this will be part of that, just no financial implications just tonight.
But if we're asking for staff time, that is a financial implication. And, you know, we're basically saying, you know, what the ask is here, that we support the continued planning of it. I myself would like to see everything's kind of put on hold until we see where we are with our budget, because we don't really know what we're going to have left. And I really thought we left a clear message last week that we have to look at a lot of things before we make any decisions on budgets. So for that reason, like I said, I can't support it tonight and would prefer it to be deferred until after our budget deliberations.
Sherry, you have a comment?
Yeah, and just again, I think, Council, this is really just in principle to the idea of Center of Excellence Park. You're not committing to anything financially at this point in time. Those types of decisions will come forward with future reports when, for example, that phase 1 that has been spoken with would come forward as potentially part of our 2024 capital for consideration, whether it's a list of here's what's recommended for council's consideration, or potentially on the list of, you know, this is something that we need to pause at this time. So this really is about being in principle support, as opposed to your full-fledged committing to Center of Excellence. There'll be a lot more decisions that would need to come with such a development.
Other comments? Councillor Fleet?
Thank you, Your Worship. Like Deputy Mayor Dickert, I sort of feel that maybe if we put a pause on phase 2 and 3 till after we go through our budget. I know we have a committee in place to raise money for our splash pad, and I'd like to see that committee maybe raise a bit more than what we asked for. But until it comes back and we finish our budget, I'd like to put a pause on 2 and 3. Thank you.
Other comments? Councillor Hudson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I know that you're saying it's a support in principle. However, in principle, I would truly like to support some of the other, what I feel more necessary things that we're going to have coming up in the budget. And by having our support in principle on this particular item shows that perhaps we aren't thinking in the right direction with the other necessities. I too would like to pause 2 and 3. And in looking at what we have here, I'm not so sure that the numbers are going to be accurate because we haven't done the geotechnical study yet. And dependent upon where that says that this will go, some of these numbers won't even be part of that. So for example, the relocated parking lot, and some things like the main entrance enhancement, some of those, I get that it would be great to have it beautiful and perfect right off the bat. But in looking at budget and money, I think there's some things that we could maybe not have right away. I'd like to have some things right away too, but it doesn't always happen that way. So I think we have a little bit of a cart before the horse here situation, where there's a lot of monies here that we don't even know if that will be part of this plan because we don't have a particular site at the location.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Councillor Sacco?
So if we are pausing phase 2 and 3, do we go ahead with what Councillor Cable has suggested? And we go only with phase 1? Would that satisfy rest of council?
So Councillor Cable, what was your amendment?
Your Worship, I was hoping that in the recommendation that it would be that council would provide support in principle to direct staff and PRC Advisory Committee to continue with phase 1 planning for the Center of Excellence development at the location of Hanover Town Park.
Being specific rather than general. So I'll ask the clerk, is that an amendment, a friendly amendment?
It would be, we wouldn't, because it doesn't really change in principle the intent of the motion. We're just clarifying.
Okay, so clarification. Chris?
I think what Laura's trying to get here is there's going to be 3 phases for this Center of Excellence. Doesn't mean it's going to start in 2024 because we can guarantee that's one of the first things to be cut on the capital was this project. But we need to move forward because it could go in 25 and then 27 and then 29. It was like a 2-year phase in for all these different phases. So if phase 1 doesn't happen in 2024 because of the budget that we were talking about, it would be delayed to 25, but at least it would give the committee all the planning and stuff that they require for all these phases to get everything in a row. Because as we know, it takes 2 to 3 years for a lot of this planning to get done. So for Deputy Mayor Dickert and Councillor Fleet, where they said, they don't want to put this phase 1. We're not saying it's happening in 2024. It's coming back to you in the budget saying this we think should be delayed because you want to make sure that you have all your fundraising in place, because if it does happen, it's possible it wouldn't start till 2025 anyways, at which time the town would have to kick in if that's the case. So we just wanted to put it there forward to you. This is the planning stage only, does have no money attached to it.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I just like to restate, I'm not suggesting that it can't happen after we have our budget deliberations, but I just think it's not a very timely request to ask for the support of it right now when we really don't know where we're going, and we have a 6-week wait. And I did, as I said at the beginning, I don't see anything time sensitive here. For my way of thinking, we would be farther ahead to just to defer it until such time as we've had our budget deliberations, and then we can give much clearer direction. Thank you.
Okay, so I've heard defer a couple of times. Again, I'll turn to the clerk. If there is a motion to defer, does that override this motion completely?
You would have to vote on the current motion as it's been recommended.
It's already on the floor.
It is.
Okay. So Councillor Sacco?
Thank you, Your Worship. So if we defer it, does that mean the fundraising that they're doing on the committee for the splash pad will change, or can they still move forward with that?
Council has already directed that fundraising campaign be supported through a report. Sorry, it's probably in here, the August, yes, thank you. So that PRC 1223, council already provided that support, or no, through the campaign, it was through the campaign approval for the splash pad campaign that came back afterwards. So council's already provided that support for the fundraising to continue. And again, I think I respect and I understand the financial piece, realizing that this is commitment to the idea and perhaps following through with the idea, in the sense that phase one, if that's the amendment that's made, because I know Councillor Cable suggested an amendment to the recommendation, but realizing that if splash pad and these phase ones are part of that overall center of excellence, there are some considerations for what it may look like overall in that initial phase one consideration. I'm not saying that very clearly as I'm saying it, but just again, if you focus just on phase one and not take into consideration the bigger picture, then that can impact your planning. And again, this is commitment for a planning piece.
Okay, Councillor Hawking.
Thank you, Your Worship. Unfortunately, I missed your initial discussion on the capital, but reading that we have another date, and it sounds like it's a very, very serious issue for us. Having said that, so I'm speaking as a member of the fundraising committee on a splash pad. We are gaining momentum. We're doing sort of behind the scenes work. But my question to the deferral, so it could be possible if we defer this whole report, and we go out and raise our money, council could say, yeah, you got a splash pad, but you got no crosswalk, you got no relocated parking because it's been deferred. I think I'm in, and I'm in sort of Brandon's camp here, where if we go out and raise the money and we build a momentum, and then we come back and say, oh, but sorry, we can just put the pipes in, and you got to wait another year for us to use it. I don't think that's the message we want to send to our community. So my position is to pause phase 2 and 3 and support phase 1 and see it through, because if we start, you need to finish the job so that it is what we said it was going to be. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Sherry, none? Okay. All right, so we do have a motion on the floor. It's been moved by Councillor Cable, seconded by Councillor Hudson. And the only difference is that we're stating with a phase planning of phase 1 is included in that. And the clerk says we don't need to change that because we're just being specific, not being general. So I will call the question. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3. That is carried. Thank you. Item 8.2 is report PB 3023. The subject is acquisition of lands by town from Brian Hawk. And it's from Andrew Wilkin, our Director of Building and Planning and CBO. And I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Fleet and Councillor Hawking. Andrew?
Thank you, Your Worship. In September of this year, Brian Hawk approached the town with respect to the donation of lands as shown on the drawing part 1 of reference plan 16-11949, also known as 741 24th Ave. At the time, Brian Hawk indicated that the property immediately to the north, quite a bit larger parcel, known as 853 24th Ave, would likely be developed in advance of 741. This is important because the north portion of 741 24th Ave physically aligns with our Saugeen Heights Cedar West subdivision across the street, really at the crest of the hill on 24th Ave. The owners of both of those properties have indicated that they want to develop those lands. With the north lands becoming developed in advance of the south lands, that access point becomes critical. We know entry permits from Grey County, which will be required for those lands, are a critical conversation. The town has envisioned that one access point would be deemed acceptable at those locations, as that's a busy road. And the intention is that in future, a traffic light would be at the crest of that hill where those roads abut. The acquisition or donation of these lands, which would be done through a deed process. Typically what would occur is these lands would be deeded during a site plan control agreement timeline or a subdivision agreement timeline. The problem here is that the lands to the south, that includes the lands we're talking about, would be completed after the lands to the north. Therefore, the acquisition of these lands and it being important that an agreement is executed at this time to give us the ability to continue with that aligned access to the west. There are no financial implications with this report. The length of the strategic plan is goal 1, safe and reliable infrastructure, healthy and welcoming community, and balanced growth. And the recommendation is that PB 30-23 acquisition of lands by town be received and that council accept the donation by way of a deed of the lands described as 741 24th Ave and direct staff to prepare an agreement to finalize the acquisition of the property. And I'll answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Andrew. Are there comments or questions for Andrew? Councillor Cable?
Thank you, Worship. Andrew, can you just explain? So if the town then owns part 1, when the road has to be constructed on part 1 in order to get to the other block of land, whose cost is that then to construct that road?
That would be the cost of the developer constructing that private laneway. That would have to be an agreement put in place at that time, assisted with being written up by our solicitor, but that would be included in the cost of the private roadway being constructed by a developer of those lands. 853 really would require those lands for access. It provides 741 incentive to do this now because roadway being constructed to the north of those lands makes 741 more valuable in the future without having them have to pay for the cost of constructing that road now.
And just for my own curiosity, so when this is all coming together, so I'm assuming that the owner of 853 is different from the owner of the part two lot. So when they're planning for that larger parcel, do those two owners work together to make sure that like the roadways are going to connect and that they're going to work in tandem with each other?
Through your worship, yeah, that's done through the town. Really, we work in unison with adjacent developers, you know, in terms of road access and design to make it work for us. So the town or the developer to the north would come to us with a potential layout. The town would envision how that would work with a future parcel of property. And that's really how it would work in tandem with other developments, knowing that they don't happen at the same time.
Excellent, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Andrew. So just so I'm clear on this, we have two different property owners there. Mr. Hawk owns that lot 1 or whatever it's called, and 2, but there's a different owner that has 853. Is that correct?
Through your worship, the same owner owns all the properties currently, with potential sale of the north property. So therefore, the 853 will be potentially changing hands.
So I guess I'm struggling with why they wouldn't just give this piece of property to the 853 property and keep us out of it, because it seems to complicate it to throw us into this mix. And it seems strange to be questioning a gift of free land, but I'm struggling with the logistics of us getting involved in that ownership, owning a piece of that land, and that, especially when it's all one owner now, why they wouldn't just move that block of land into the 853 land and solve all their issues.
I guess, you know, part of the risk could be if 741, if that wasn't done in 741 were to be sold as well, then the town or as part of a development agreement, we would potentially be looking to negotiate an agreement with somebody else at that time to align our intersection that we hope to see at that time. It could be done after the fact. The developer technically could negotiate with potential sale of the north lands to align that, similar as to what you're saying, in which we would only be involved at the time of a design of that property. I don't think there's much great risk here, and I think it really just helps us confirm that we can have the design that we would like to see up there in terms of the road alignment. And it really leaves a lot less chance than that what your option potentially could by not doing this.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Cable.
Thank you, Worship. So Andrew, at some point when either of those properties is then developed, is the idea that the town would then give that piece of land that was donated to, we would give it back to somebody? Like, we don't want to, are we, like, if the whole thing's not going to be a roadway, we don't necessarily want to own the whole block, do we?
Through your worship, yeah, part one essentially will be, it's the width of what the road allowance will be at one point. Ultimately, we will own it at the end of the day. I would say that's a discussion with our legal counsel and solicitor, the best way to put those provisions into an agreement, if those should go over to the developer of the property to the north in terms of the development portion, which we would then in turn take back at the assumption of an agreement. Or if there can be provisions put into the agreement that says the roadway on the town portion will be constructed by the developer, and how that wording is exactly put in, I think would just probably be best served at that time.
All right, okay, Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Andrew, for your report. I'm sort of struggling why he wants to give us the land, why we need to be involved with this. Like, I'm just trying to figure that one out. Like, and there's possibility of the parcel land being sold. So, like, nobody gives anything away in this day and age. So, as a donation, but I'm struggling with that.
Through your worship, I guess I would say, as you look at the shape of the property, it's an odd shape, right? That little piece really doesn't do anything for the development. It's not big enough to build a building on that portion of it and meet any setback requirements or anything. really it's essentially just a roadway or a green space as part of the development. So therefore, to the developer of 741, if another developer were to develop the interior roadway, the private roadway that would be developed with a development, and they pay for that road, all of a sudden 741 becomes more valuable because it has a private roadway immediately adjacent to it that 741 does not have to pay for to put in or contribute to that degree. Therefore, that could, reading through the lines, potentially be the impetus of assisting in the development of the Northlands first with this access point.
All right, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of report PB 3023? That is carried. Thank you, Andrew. Item 8.3 is report DCS 2023. The subject is the annual liability and property insurance renewal for 2024. It's from Chris Walker, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer, and I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Fleet and Deputy Mayor Dickert. Chris?
Thank you, Your Worship. As we know, each year we go through and we do insurance for the following year. The total amount of insurance coverage has gone up to over $102,900,000 for all our property, equipment, and buildings. And I've attached program summary information showing the coverage as well as the limits and amounts for your information. We've been with Intact Public Entities. They've switched from Frank Cowan about 5 years ago. So Intact is basically the same insurance company that Frank Cowan was. We still have our same broker, CMR Insurance. We went out in 2021 for a request for proposals, found that Intact was the best bargain for our dollars. And we only had another company put in there and they wanted us to increase our deductible to $50,000 for every claim that we had. And it was another $250,000 more in premium at that time. Our experience and claims with Intact and CMR have been good, and Intact provides us many municipal value-added services such as risk management, webinars, policy and procedure audits, as well as inspections and asset valuations. CMR has also gone out to get us coverage for the volunteer firemen's insurance services, or the VFIS coverage, and we also have cyber liability insurance outside of this policy, as well as our equipment program. We also have drone insurance that wasn't available at the time, but I received information late Friday that it will be approximately $3,400. It's all payable through the fire department, so we didn't need to really put it in as our total for the insurance because it's a separate policy altogether. In 2023, it was about $1,800 for drone insurance because we had 2 really small drones, but now we have 3. And you also remember at our meeting, he showed us the drones and how big they are now. So they're a little more expensive. Okay, the proposed annual renewal program cost represents about a 9.3% increase from the overall 2023 premium. You may remember in 2022, the increase was actually 13.6 because our loss ratios were so high for the past 5 years. But 2022 and 2023, we've seen that our claims ratio is going down the target. So as long as these ratios stabilize below the threshold, the town will continue to see annual premium adjustments below the provincial average. The average provincial rate increase for tax for insurance for municipalities was about 23% in 2023, where ours was 13.6. They haven't received all the increases yet. I checked with our Tony from Intact, and he mentioned that most municipalities are paying 10 to 15% if they have a good claims history. But those that have higher claims are seeing huge increases. And again, it's the overall claims impacts from flooding and fires has put a tremendous pressure on just our basic insurance premiums, regardless of whether we have any claims experience whatsoever. So in the one chart on page 16 of your package, you'll see the description, and the increase is mostly our insurance and property liability, which is a 9.5%, and then individual breakdowns of equipment, firefighters, accident insurance, as well as the cyber liability insurance. And for future years, we could look to increase our deductibles to see what type of premium reductions. However, keep in mind that then this puts pressure on our yearly operations to offset the deductibles versus what is available in the reserves. So any savings on premium may need to go to the insurance reserve to offset the higher deductibles, such as if we increase from our 15,000 deductible to a 25,000 deductible, we are now on the hook for the first $25,000. Municipal insurance premiums are extremely high and increasing regardless of which insurance company is providing the coverage. On page 17, you'll see that what our insurance amount was back in 2018 versus 2023. Between 2023 to 2018, it's gone up 188%. With the 2024 premium that I'm showing you there versus the 2018, it's gone up 204%, which is an increase of almost $472,588, which is equivalent to 5.6% increase on our town levy overall. So those are things that are beyond your control as council, beyond our control as staff. And everybody sees that on their own personal insurance too. You go, I'm doing all the best we can on this. We have no claims, and yet everything continues to go up. The proposed liability and property premium of $703,708 includes deductibles of $15,000 for our liability, cyber and sewer backup, $10,000 for automobile, $5,000 for data processing, fine arts and wrongful dismissal, and $500 for non-owned automobile insurance. We continue to put aside $20,000 a year. For the past 20 years, we've been putting monies aside, and we have experienced over 178,804 deductibles in claims from 2018 to 2023. To date, in 2023, we have spent $6,447, not thousand, has been used from this reserve in 2023. Basically, the police depleted our reserve because they had a huge claims over the last 3 years. So we've suggested they keep their own separate insurance reserve. So it used to be $25,000 that we put aside. They now have a separate $5,000 so that we have our own. At the end of this year, we have about $26,000 for the town's use for future deductibles, should that occur. The link to the strategic plan is our open and responsible government. And the recommendation is that this report DCS 20-23, our annual liability and property insurance renewal for 2024, be received by council. The council agrees to the comprehensive insurance program effective January 1st to December 31st, 2024, as prepared by Intact Public Entities at a cost of $703,708, plus the following separate coverages for equipment breakdown from Intact at a cost of $9,356. VFIS firefighters accident insurance for $4,915, our cyber liability insurance for $10,320 for a total annual cost of $728,299 plus applicable taxes, and that council agrees to continue to set aside $20,000 annually for insurance deductibles. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Any comments, questions? Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Chris, just for my information, can you just explain the loss ratio? So in 2019, 98%, and now in 2023, we're at 36. Can you just give me some examples of what that would have involved?
So they're looking at if for every, say, $100 you pay in premium, you should only have $55 paid back. And so there should be $45 of every $100 that you keep that covers the premiums and everything that's required. But as you can see in 2019, 2020, 2021, we were up very high, which pushed our premiums up higher to offset the costs where they made losses on that. They say the 55%. So every dollar you put in, you have to give back 55 cents that they pay for your actual losses on there. But we had a huge loss on our fleets in 2022 and partial in 23, and that was mostly for police. So that's why, but again, it's combined total for each department.
So with our new fleet vehicles, will any of these numbers change?
It's all based on claims. Whether we lease or own vehicles, we're still covered insurance wise, and it still has to be covered in the same manner.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Chris. And you touched on it. My question was around the deductibles, and I think you mentioned that one of the other companies they looked at wanted a $25,000 or $50,000 deductible. But did we look at the company we're using and see if there's any, like, has did we do the math? You know, adding up, well, how number of claims we have versus what a higher deductible would be. And it seems to change between quite a few things. It was 15,000 for general liability. It's like 25 on flood damage, and it's just kind of bouncing around. I just wonder what drives that. And the other question I had is, what do we insure under fine arts?
We don't really have a lot of fine arts to answer that question. That's just part of their data processing in fine arts. They just combine it all together if you had any. As for the deductibles, they are suggesting not to put our deductible, change our deductible until our loss ratio is more in line with what we need to be at. At that point, you could get better rates then, because your loss ratio has been good for the last 2 to 3 years. Then your premiums can start going down much more. And then your deductibles you can raise up. So you can go up to 25,000 for, mostly it's liability is your big ones, right? An automobile, well, you don't want to have a $25,000 liability, because then there's no sense even insuring your automobiles, because that's what it costs you pretty well to get it fixed. It's more on the liability if somebody got extremely hurt.
It'd be comprehensive on the actual vehicle, wouldn't it, rather than liability?
Well, you're looking at the liability. Liability is your big one, because most of us, if we have an older vehicle, we'll say, take off the collision, take off all the comprehensive. We only want the liability. So if we got hurt and somebody got hurt in an accident, that's what you want covered. Whereas the car, you can say, write it off because, you know, it's all rusted anyways, but the person inside is more important than the vehicle because it can be replaced. So that's the difference. So we are looking at that possibly if our ratios go down again, but if it goes up to 25,000, then we have to come up with that additional $10,000. And where are we coming up with that money? Unless, say we save 50,000 on premiums, is it worth it? Then you would want to make sure that that 50,000 you saved is put aside so that you can use it to cover those. Because all it takes is 2 or 3 claims a year, and we have depleted all our reserve that's been set up for there. That's what we're concerned with.
And that's exactly what I was asking. I just didn't know if we'd actually done the math and said, you know, we have this, and there's no way of knowing how many claims you're going to have. I realize that, but you have to work on averages and things like that. So thank you for that explanation.
I think we do very well on the preventative side, right? Because I know staff take all the webinars and whatever that Intact will put out there, and all the log books when we've had our tours. You notice that all the staff had to list whatever when they checked levels on things and vehicles and whatever. So the more we can do with that, and of course cybersecurity and all our quizzes and tutorials that are keeping us alert about not clicking on things we shouldn't be clicking on. So. All right, any other comments or questions? I will call the question. All in favor of DCS 2023? That is carried. Thank you. Item 8.4 is report DCS 22-23. It is the 2024 user fees and charges revised, and it's from Chris Walker, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer, and I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Sackle and Councillor Hawking. Chris?
Thank you, Worship. Council may remember we brought a report back earlier in November, and it was withdrawn, and council requested that staff increase the fees by the minimum CPI, Consumer Price Index, sorry, of approximately 4%, and bring back to council for the review. So we have done all the schedules A to Schedule M, and each department reviewed the proposed rates and updated as per council's direction. So there is a chart for discussion. So under Schedule A, which was done by administrative staff, there are no changes with these revisions because all of them were updated higher than the 4% originally. Schedule B, it should be cemetery staff, not board, that reviewed that, since we don't have a board anymore. And there were no changes because they were already up 4% previously. The Schedule C, the PRC Advisory Committee Administrative, it's increased the revenue with revised rates to 4%. So it basically doubled what we had originally said it would be. Again, keep in mind all these rates that we're assuming the approximate additional revenue is based on what we have received to date in 2023 and what it would be compared to if these rates were switched, okay? So we can only base it on the actual year-to-date information that we have. The same with Schedule D, you will also see an additional amount of $6,700 because it's a a straight increase of another 2% across the board. Library went and reviewed some of theirs, and based on their additional revenues, it would be about another $130. Schedule F is basically our water and wastewater rates, and all that was approved by council at the previous meeting on November 27th with the previous report of DCS 19-23. The landfill committee, there are no changes because it's all through the landfill committee and it's not part of the town. The fire chief reviewed all his rates, and with all the revisions, and even though the rates are really going up, based on the year to date, it would be another $50. The building, there's minimal changes because in order to make the changes for the building, you have to actually have a bylaw to go through and verify every rate is being done properly. There's legislation that says you have to do that. You can't just willy-nilly put a rate in and say that's what it's going to be. As far as Schedule J for the planning, increased revenue with additional rates would be another $600. Schedule K would be the, let me see what it was. Should have been the licenses, and there was nothing on them to date that was changing, and we made updates there. But again, we're at the mercy of the lottery licenses, that it cannot be greater than 3% as it's regulated by the Ontario government. And the taxi cab licenses, we could not make any additional changes because that's established by the Police Services Board, and they have been reviewing that for the past year and have not come back to the clerk's office with any changes at that point in time. And then Schedule L has been updated, and it's not going to be much revenues there because it's like $1 more that we're asking for each dog tag. And Schedule M will be the additional double the amount that we had requested previously, which, so I'm going back on all these pages. Too many pages. Would be another $80. So the attached schedules show you everything that's there. So the previous proposed rates that we originally brought forward were highlighted in yellow and noted in red. And any of the new proposed rates are now in blue and highlighted in green. So if there's nothing updated in the new 2024 area in blue and green, that means the previous rates from the red and yellow from the proposed rates stayed in place. But in order for any of these proposed fees to be effective in 2024, a bylaw to prescribe these is required. The previous report indicated we would have an additional revenue of about $11,460. With these additional increases, again, because it's such a low amount, we're looking at another $9,400 for a total increase of about $20,860. I know council thought maybe we double up everything that we had, but because stuff was already there at the 4%, we weren't increasing additional areas as well. Most of our revenue increases, again, are in the user fees. So landfill was originally $22,300, and that will remain the same. And then the water and wastewater rates were as previously done at DCS 1923 at the November 20th meeting. All the revenues shown in the 2024 budget will reflect these proposed fees. So the recommendation, sorry, I should say the link to the strategic plan is safe and reliable infrastructure, balanced growth, and open and responsible government. And that report recommendation, report DCS 22-23 for the 2024 user fees and charges that have been revised be received. The council accepts changes to attached user fees and charges for 2024 as proposed. And further, that a bylaw to establish the rates, fees, and charges for various services provided by the municipality be presented for council's consideration. There was an error on schedule, I think it was D or E, which one was it? D, which is page 39 of your package. There was a new low ratio for lessons added, and it said it was 1-to-6 ratio, and it's actually 1-to-3 ratio, just so you're aware of that. And that should be it. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Questions, comments? Councillor Fleet.
Thank you, Your Worship, and this is for Laura with the recreation programs. Some of the guys at Huff and Puff Hockey were wondering about, I'm a puffer myself, but anyways, they were wondering about a season pass.
Through your worship, are you looking for an unlimited seasons pass, or we were proposing to do a 10 visit pass? Will that meet your needs?
they're looking for a season from September till March, the whole season.
And are they looking for unlimited use or would they be able to do some type of a punch pass?
I'm sure a punch pass or I think they're looking at the cost on a season pass compared, like you got a bit of a break. When you get a 10 visit pass, they're wondering if it was a yearly pass.
So at this point, we haven't set a rate for that. We can certainly look at it. I don't think I would be in a position to recommend an unlimited pass, but we could look at a punch pass.
Just some of the guys that Huff and Puff have asked, you know, what about a seasonal pass? All right, thank you.
Other comments? Councillor Cable?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering if we could clarify how the Build Back Better assistance strategy fits into the current rate structure and whether I guess how the current rates are reflected in our agreement with user groups.
Is that Sherry, Laura, who's gonna?
So right now, with the way the rates are, so the Build Back Better assistance, we'd be in year 3 or season 3. They would receive, those user groups would receive a 10% discount as per the Build Back Better assistance program. Council had in that same report indicated that rates would increase 2% in 2024. You, at our last meeting, directed to go 4%, which this reflects. If you wish to maintain that net financial impact from a Build Back Better assistance strategy, then the Build Back Better assistance strategy subsidy would have to increase to reflect each rate, if that's what you wish to do. Or circumstances have changed and rates are now increasing 4% as opposed to 2%.
Did you get that?
Yes, thank you. No, that's very helpful.
Okay.
So I think my preference would be that we would increase the Build Back Better assistance strategy discount. I don't know what we're calling it, a discount, a subsidy for 2024, so that council does uphold the agreement that was made with our user groups.
Councillor Sacco?
Thank you, Your Worship. Laura, I have a question for you as well. So I've been back in the pool lately and one of the seniors spoke to me and said, you know, we should have something in place for snowbirds. So she buys an annual membership, good for the year, which is wonderful. But if she's gone for half of the year, then she would like it to be able to pause it while she's flying south, so to speak. And I just wondered, have you ever considered anything like that?
That would be the motivation through Your Worship. That would be the motivation through our 6-month membership, which is available for student, senior, and adult.
And I know through Your Worship that her comment's going to be, yes, but I get a better deal if I buy an annual membership. So I see your point. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I agree with Councillor Cable. I think we should stand behind the commitment we made to the Build Back Better. So I don't know if we need a motion to get that forward, but I agree that, you know, we made a commitment. I think we should stand behind it. But at the same time, I think the groups need to recognize that prices are going up, and this, by seeing those revised prices, they can prepare now for next year or for whatever going to the future.
That's maybe a question for Vicky, whether we need to reflect that in the rates motion, just that increased subsidy, because essentially what will have to happen is each rate will have to be looked at to each rental rate. And it's really going to be, from what I understand from Laura, is ball and soccer, because most of the other groups are in their year 3 currently now. So it would be those ball and soccer rates, and pending the rate, we may just have to adjust it accordingly. And it may vary. So it's probably average around that 11.73%, but some may be a little bit less than that to reflect, to get that net balance.
How is it worded in the actual signed agreements that the subsidy is calculated?
Through your worship, there really isn't a signed agreement. So this was just there would be a council report, back when it was rolled out that would have provided, that calculation. I think if the net number is the same, I'm not seeing any issue myself.
So there is in place a formula that is consistent, that will maintain that subsidy at the correct level?
Yes, that's what we're proposing.
Okay, and that's without an amended motion then?
Yes.
Okay, yep, then we would not need to amend the motion.
Other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Cable.
This isn't necessarily for this year, but I wonder if staff for next year, as we look at rates across all departments, one thing that stood out to me was that if I was going to go and photocopy a sheet of paper in the town of Hanover, I probably would have to look at the different rates, because if I go to the library, it costs one price, and if I go to Parks and Rec, it costs one price, and if I go to the administrative office, it costs a different price. So I wonder if next year, it's a very small item, but perhaps we could look at just making sure that any services that we have within 3 different departments are all the same price.
There are also businesses in town that will photocopy. So again, we don't want to be competing with local businesses, because some raise money from it. So, all right, I will call the question. All in favor of this report? That is carried. Thank you. Item 8.5 is report CAO 1623. It is the water services agreement for 13553 County Road 10 in West Gray. It's from Sherry, our CAO, and Ron, our Director of Public Works. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Cable and Councillor Sacco. Sherry?
Thank you, Your Worship. So this proposed water services agreement is really follow-up to discussions that some of you may recall were initiated in summer of 2022. And at that time, a report was brought forward to council with respect to providing water services to this property, which is the Shell and convenience store location at our 10-4 junction. And at that time, council's direction was to seek a proposed water services agreement from West Gray as a proposal. So that came on October 11th, 2023. And subsequent communications have occurred with West Gray staff as well as the Becker Milk Company Limited staff to confirm the draft water services agreement terms that are before you this evening in this report. So from a property access to water services connection, there is an existing water main across the road on the south side of County Road 28. So therefore it is favorable for connection. And the proposed solution would be to install the required water services access and connect to the existing water main by directionally drilling under County Road 28. From an agreement terms, this will sound very familiar to when we were considering a water services agreement with property in Brockton on the north side earlier this year. And from a consideration standpoint, the proximity to water service means that access is favorable for water connection. There's again that one-off request for this property may generate other requests for connections to water services. And if multiple requests are granted, then it could create a cluster development in West Gray. Again, that perception of providing municipal water services to non-Hanover properties when some of our own do not have that could be perceived negatively. Certainly at this property, the fact that they have lack of potable water presents that health and safety issue. And we know that a number of our residents as well as travelers patronize this business. And a service agreement with West Gray certainly could be considered a positive gesture in consideration of our larger and ongoing conversations with respect to growing prosperity in South Gray. From an agreement terms perspective, it is an agreement that's with the 3 parties. So the town, municipality of West Gray, as well as the Becker Milk Company. It is for water service for the existing structures only located on that property. West Gray and or the property owner are not permitted to make any extension or extensions to the water service to Hanover's water system. The property owner is responsible for all costs with respect to the installation of the water service from the existing water main to their building, as well as the water meter and any legal costs for the registration of the agreement on title. We will charge and be responsible for the collection of all applicable charges. And then the West Gray has agreed that should there be any unpaid water bills or water arrears, it would be added to their taxes accordingly, given that West Gray has the ability to do that. We retain that ownership and responsibility for maintenance and operations, and there's indemnification clauses for all parties. From a financial implications standpoint, right now, based on the preliminary cost estimate that Ron has worked with Cobite Engineering on, and that's $21,700 for that water service. And again, the property owner is going to be responsible for that cost, and it will be based on invoice costs as opposed to just the preliminary estimate that we have. And given that this service is beyond the town of Hanover's municipal boundaries, then they will be the double the water rate will be applied for the billing purposes. The link to the strategic plan is open and responsible government. And if there's any specific questions, I and or Ron from a service perspective, water service perspective can answer those for you.
Thanks, Sherry. Comments or questions? Councillor Sacco.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, first of all, I'm very pleased to see that Hanover's working with West Gray to solve this water access concern by a West Gray resident. And since the Hanover water main's on the south side of County Road 28 across the road, and the drilling would be necessary to connect to the water main, I'm wondering about the traffic on County Road 28. How will it be affected during that drilling, and how long might it take?
Through your worship, I'm going to say that's Ron will have more specifics on that.
Well, the drilling of it, the water main's on the south side of the road, so drilling it on is to reduce the impact down, make it minimal going across the road. It's not an open cut construction. It's drilling, get back to the property line, which is on the north side, which is the Shell station. Then they have to do, carry it on from the property line limit further to the east to connect in on the, I guess I would say, the southeast corner of the building. That's where they're heading to. So the disruption for the most part is going to be right on their own private property.
Other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the report. Just to clarify, it's in the, when you read the agreement, it says, makes reference to the connection point, which I'm assuming is the property line. But the 21,700, they're paying everything, like even any asphalt repairs or whatever that would be required out at the main connection.
That is correct. They're paying for all restoration costs. This estimated cost gets us across the road to that connection point. Then they would be looking at everything. We wouldn't be involved from that connection point going easterly and getting to their building.
I will call the question. I'll say that again. All in favor of report CAO 1623. That's carried. Thank you. Item 9 is correspondence requiring action. We have one item, and this is correspondence from the municipality of Brockton. And this is regarding the airport, and they have asked that this letter be placed on our agenda for council to make a decision regarding the future of the Saugeen Municipal Airport. Their resolution at their latest meeting was to, they agreed to option 1, proposing a sale of the airport. So discussion. Comments? Councillor Hocking, did you want to start or not? Or do you want to end? Maybe you want to be the last speaker. Okay.
No, I thought Fiona Hamilton did a very good job on the report. It was very comprehensive. And I would, I don't think this is the time, but I would be most willing to answer a lot of questions that you may have as a result of the report. But there's something there that I personally would like to move forward on, and it is, we look forward to hearing from you and are available for any inquiries or meetings to jointly discuss. I would suggest that we as a town of Hanover take progressive action and invite all counselors, senior staff of the 3 municipalities to a comprehensive meeting where we thoroughly hash out the long-term direction of the airport. Councillor Sacco came to our second economic development meeting, and I'm sure she was pleased with the excitement. And it seems like we're rolling upstream with the 2 municipalities greatly involved, supported by Grey County. You know, there's questions there in the nice flowery pictures about what's the future. Well, we currently have staff working on that, and it would be a shame to me. And I honestly think this is a good example of a lack of transparency between us, because we're really at different parts of the spectrum on this. And I think a healthy discussion, and you know, at the end of the day, if councils of Hanover and West Grey say, yeah, it's time to sell it. I mean, I'm a firmer believer of team, and if but it is a very, very serious decision, because you're throwing away a public asset of 254 acres, and you may never get it back, and you may never have the input that you currently have. As we move forward, and I've said this before, we were tied up in a whole different issue. We have made great gains, and if you look at the budget, I'm going to suggest that we're going to be close to paying off that $44,000 debt that we had. And I want to remind everyone, with no increase in our budget last year, because Brockton, for whatever reason, would not go along with the other 2. So we have a bit of a dissension, or not, that's not dissension, but a difference of opinion, I guess. And I'm not sure everybody knows, and I don't know why Brockton wants to sell it. I wish they would just come out and, you know, you hear a rumor from this and you hear something from another person, and so you know, and if they make their point clear and share with us, yeah, let's sell it. And in the document, there are some errors. I don't want to get into that tonight, because there's some assumptions made that really need to be addressed. But having said that, I think it's time that the 3 of us get together, chew on this, look at long term, and make a decision. It's not the best right now for selling airports, because everybody's selling them. It's a buyer's market, and it's a buyer's market for an entrepreneurial flip. That's what these people are doing, and you never know what happens when you lose your control of an asset that was given to you in good conscience by governments prior to us. So, having said that, that's my position on the report. I think I would table it. I would write them back and say thank you. Thank you for the work, Fiona. You did a good job. And we'd be willing to sit down and chat about the future of the airport, and without having made any decision. And at the end of the day, hopefully we have a decision. It'd be nice to get this resolved, you know, You know, and I'm going on and on. We've done so many good things. You know, we got a viable restaurant now. We got a flight academy going. We got an excellent airport manager. We got for the first time ever, we got pilots coming to our economic development meeting with their input from the pilot community. Things that not just me, but we worked on as a way to improve communication within the whole facility. And I think we've made great gains this year. However, we haven't been able to convince one of our partners, and we are a partner. You have to remember that no one municipality can just go out and put a for sale sign up. And so I think it's a timely discussion, and because we've lost a lot of momentum, and that was my issue with the splash pad. You know, we had a great fundraising campaign going. We're making donations, and all of a sudden Brockton, for whatever reason, no consultation, decides that they're going to sell the. I mean, we can't be doing these things. We have to work together as a team. And Brockton only considered two options. There's more than two options that we could consider and present at this meeting, because you know, it's an asset that's been there, and I believe every counselor here tonight should have all the same information. You could say put a little subcommittee together, but it's not the same. You're only going to hear what comes out of the minutes. I think a good dialogue, you know, a Saturday morning, maybe we get together and sort of iron out our differences and to see what happens at the end of the day. So I don't think I'll be able to have anything left to end those, but anyway, that's my position.
Thank you. Other comments or agreement with Councillor Hocking? Councillor Hudson?
Yes, I think that would be a good idea, Councillor Hocking, to have all members available to hear all the information. I do have a couple of questions because I'm not that familiar. I'm wondering if you can tell me the year that Aaron Eldersley pulled out.
It's way before my time, but I think it was around 2000, shortly after, because that's one of the issues. And I should tell you what happened. The Saugeen Economic Development gave that airport to 4 municipalities, and we have an procedural bylaw that says when you withdraw, you indicate you have 2 years notice, and then you forfeit any ownership in that property. So I don't know what the amount was their contribution. So that in turn caused the formula to be rejigged. And that's an issue that, and I'd be willing to look at the second option they had there. Let's look at because there's always a little bit of angst. How come you're 31.19% and 27? You know, it's a silly number, and it's who knows how they ever came up with it. But maybe it's time to look at that. But that's what happened is around they pulled out, and because they pulled out, they lost ownership, and it then turned over to the 3 municipalities.
So then the agreement was to be reviewed every 5 years, but it doesn't look like it was reviewed since 2012. So was there any particular reason why it hasn't happened in the last 11 years?
Vicky's been part of this process. We hired a lawyer to come up with a new bylaw for the 3 corporations. You'll see a copy of it from Fiona with all the color codes. Well, we've got a bylaw already set to go to councils. So we have expended clerical time and financial money. It's sitting there, and one of the issues, and it was a good issue that Brockton raised, was the old bylaw used to allow up to 7 members. Well, there's only 3 municipality reps. So in essence, if you had 4 lay people, those 4 lay people could overrule the 3 municipal reps, and the municipalities, don't forget, own the airport. So that was one of the major changes. The new one would be only 5. So we have a council rep from Brockton, Hanover, and West Gray, and 2 lay people. But that's it's already to be endorsed. So we'll see what if that. I guess what I'm saying is we put that on hold right now till we have our meeting.
So at the time of the meeting, then perhaps they could go over the percentages of the sharing of costs as well then. Because Brockton used to be higher than Hanover. And now, you know, the percentages are kind of all over the place here.
Yeah, no.
Like at one time, when is this, sorry, look at the year, 2006, Brockton was 50%, Hanover was 21.4. And then it changed later on, so I'm not sure how that works out.
I have no idea, and that's.
If you look on Schedule C of that cost sharing, it's on their page 116 of your document. It's a combination of the things, hangar occupancy, location, and then the weighting factors.
But I guess this is something that should be looked at this is part of the looking at every 5 years thing, or nobody really knows the answer to, okay, then.
Has slipped by, there's no good reason why, but you're absolutely right. It should be reviewed on an ongoing basis. It says in our bylaw every 5 years, so I think we should comply with the bylaw.
Councillor Sackel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate your remarks, Councillor Hawking, and I did really enjoy going to that airport meeting. It was really uplifting, and there were a lot of people who had some wonderful ideas and frustrations. Something as simple as County of Grey not allowing a sign on Highway 4 to advertise the airport. That's frustrating, I'm sure. It's got to be for the commission.
Excuse me, County of Bruce.
County of Bruce. Yes, but, oh, okay, Bruce County won't allow the signage. That's really sad because it's all about visibility. And I think that would bring in more business. And they were talking about so many ways in which the airport could bring in more business. I know as a member of the travel group for Probus, we go there every month to support them, to support Landy Gear, the restaurant. And I really appreciate that. So they had so many possibilities. So I hope that I want to say that I'm in agreement with you, Councillor Hawking. We should have a meeting and talk and get it out in the open and find out why Brockton wants to sell and see what we can do about that. And maybe we can bring in somebody else as well if necessary.
Other comments or questions? Councillor Cable?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Hawking, for providing the initial comments. I do think that there's a lot of potential in the airport, and certainly in the documents that were presented, it talks about future ventures, and you're doing a lot of strategic thinking about future development potential on the lands. I'm just still not convinced that the current ownership structure is really going to be able to facilitate that kind of development. We know that your staff, it's a very lean operation that's out there, and I really don't know if we're going to be able to get all 3 players on board with the idea of expanding the staff in order to look at potential growth. I kind of feel that our current structure is going to limit us, because unless we can get all 3 players on board for, let's put more money into this in order to help it really grow, I feel like we're going to kind of stay in a very flat line where we're kind of just trying to have as lean of a budget as possible. And so I do wonder if there's options out there for somebody to take this on as a venture and look at how they could develop that property.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think what we've always envisioned is we Hanover West Gray have had the support of our economic development managers of each municipality, plus we have the impetus of Grey County staff and their resources. So we really have moved what I guess light years basically because we've had those resources at really no expense to the overall budget. See, I'm done. Just
Okay, Councillor Fleet, then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I've been reading through this, and one part that stuck in my head here, it's difficult to predict what the appropriate sale price would be for Saugeen Municipal Airport, and I'd like to know what the sale price would be. And I'm on board with Councillor Hawking. I'd like to see the three municipalities sit down and as councils or whatever and hash this out. I think there's a lot of possibilities out there for this airport. I don't know at whose cost, or like Councillor Cable was saying, maybe we got to look at a private investor to maybe go forward with this project. Reading in the minutes, I noticed there's a loan out for 36,000 for a tractor, and Meridian Credit Union 59,000. It owes Brockton. Why wouldn't it owe the three municipalities?
Good question, Councillor Fleet. If you went through the budget sheet, and it's hard to pick up, but Chris knows exactly the numbers. We previous commissions again, because they hadn't done adequate planning, didn't have capital money. They needed money for money for a tractor. So I think Dave Inglis, Mayor of Brockton, was chair at that time. So the town of Brockton floated a loan, and we pay that off on a monthly, on a yearly basis. And you'll see it in the budget sheet. It's a loan. I think it's comes due in 2026. And then another good move was to build the big hangar, and the idea being that once that hangar's paid off, our current revenue pays the cost of the loan of the hangar, but then when it's paid off in 2030, we now have that as extra revenue. So those two items would be eliminated from the budget. And let's see if I can find it for you, what it is right now. Yeah, the interest expense is a hangar and tractor. That doesn't seem right. That's pretty cheap. Anyway, I don't want to quote it because I don't want to say, but Christy, have you any idea what we pay on a yearly basis?
On page 91 is the general ledger for that, and you're paying interest about $4,800 a year for both the loans, and you're repaying back 20,000 a year, like very small amounts.
Yeah.
But if you look on the next page, is page 93, that's your balance sheet, and that gives you a direct information that there's over $90,827 in loans outstanding, of which 54,649 is for the hangar through the Meridian, and then the 36,178, which is through Brockton.
Mhm.
Again, they have no reserves. So unlike where we're able to borrow from within, if we have something from one department to another, we can do that. They have nothing set aside. And as Councillor Hawking had said, they don't have a plan in place for how to replace any of their assets.
Go ahead, Councillor Fleet, and Councillor Hawking, I'll ask you to.
Like, I see the value in the property and I see the value in operating the airport. And if that airport can operate and make the three municipalities and survive and be good for the economic development of our area, like a lot of people say we're so lucky to have this airport, but then you look at the value of the land, it's really tough to, I'd like to know what the property's worth, and I want the airport to be successful, so it's.
Well, I can tell you, excuse me, the assessment of, that's not the market value. It's about 3.6 million.
Right.
So that's what we pay taxes to Brockton on. And you look in the budget, it's about $19,000 a year. I think, when you're in real estate, what you do is you do a cost comparison to what is already sold. So if we did put it for sale, you'd hire an appraiser. And that appraiser would go out, and they're different than a real estate agent. They're a little more qualified in this. And they would go and see what, because it's a unique property, so it's they'd go to the airports, and I think Owen Sound 1.8. I just don't know, Harold, but both of them are now up for sale again, and that's what I'm saying. When you're selling airports or selling anything, it's like housing. If there's a whole, if there's a glut on it, it becomes a buyer's market. So I really don't know until you do the appraisal, but I can tell you that we have the most hangars of any airport this side of Waterloo, city of Waterloo. We have over, and a lot of them are leased, which means it's ongoing revenue. What we do is we lease the land, and then they throw up a building or a hangar. And that has been the direction of previous commissions, and I support it because it gives you a stream of revenue every year if you lease it.
Okay, Deputy Mayor, the final Deputy Mayor, and then Deputy Mayor, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I support Councillor Hawking. I think we need to sit down 3 municipalities, and reading in this report, there is a waiting list for 6 hangars, people looking for hangars. So I think we need to sit down as the 3 municipalities and hash this out.
I'll try and be brief. And I agree. I think we need to have that meeting because I do not have a good feeling for what this economic benefit we're getting, because we talk about it, but I honestly haven't seen any hard examples of it. So I'd like to get more information on that. And my other question is likely maybe for Mr. Cooper. We have a facility out there and a water line that crosses the entire property. Are we well secured in our right of way that goes across there? Or is there any concerns that we have if that property was sold?
We have an access that comes up from well 1, but we would like to secure an easement over the roadway that goes into there.
Because we also have the main line that comes from Rural Lake that comes across the entire property, do we not?
Yes, we do, but that one has an easement over it.
Okay, final comment, Councillor Hawking.
Say the last one. Oh, I thought you were going to make, okay. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to repeat. This is timely, and I really want a thorough investigation, and I want councillors to vote, or to not to vote, but to understand the ramifications of this decision. There's no doubt, we are the hub of South Bruce and Grey County. An airport is definitely an asset going forward. I wish as Deputy Mayor Dickert said, that is my goal for next year, is to get something there, like a new business or something moving forward that we're out there talking to. If we had an airport mechanic, I mean, the local one is Mitchell retiring, so we've got our feelers out, and we've got a consultant that works for Grey County, and he's in the city, and there's opportunities out there. We've just got to hit the jackpot, and I'm still enthusiastic, but I'm also a realist, and someone said it. We need everybody. I think it was Councillor Cable. We need everybody swimming or rowing the same way, and we'll see what happens. And if it isn't, it isn't. That's but at the end of the day, if you give it your best and it's not possible, so be it, but I'm going down with the ship if it goes down.
Okay, thanks, Counselor Hawking. So what I've heard is we're in an agreement to arrange a meeting with both partners, Brockton and West Gray and ourselves, and work this out. We'll get some details. So I've checked with the clerk. We don't need a motion for that. We're in agreement that we will move forward with that action. So Counselor Hawking?
Sorry, Vicky. Oh. I should give you a big poker. I think we need to, plan, say, February, March, when, we can get it, because everybody's got busy schedules, and I would hate to call a meeting when we'd only have, 50% attendance. So, and I don't even know the format of the meeting. I mean, I'm just thinking it'd be a good thing to get together.
I think we're all in agreement. So Counselor Cable.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering, could you clarify, is the meeting going to replace the staff report from Town of Hanover staff that was coming, which was going to explain economic development statistics and 5 and 10-year capital forecasts, things like that?
So based on that September letter that Brockton had sent, we have had some staff to staff conversations, Brockton, West Gray and Hanover. We knew that this Brockton was working on a report, and kind of mutually West Gray and Hanover staff decided, let's wait and see what the Brockton report includes, because as Dave said, it's a fairly thorough report. And whether we could build on it anymore with what we've got, right? There's a lot of information in there. So what I'm hearing is have this meeting, invite all councils, as has been noted by a number of you, and see what conversation can happen. Now, it looks like Brockton's perhaps made a decision. I believe this is also on West Gray's council agenda tomorrow at their meeting, so.
Because there are more than 2 options here. We've only heard of 2 from Brockton, but there are more. So I think once we've had this meeting, there'll be new ideas, new suggestions, recommendations, and then I would envision a report coming back from Sherry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if I were to do a report right now, it probably would be based on the asks that are in this letter and the resolution that Brockton has provided. And that is either we support a sale or that update of the agreement.
Go ahead, Councillor Cable.
But I still would like to see the 5 and 10-year capital forecast for the airport. And in the current agreement, so say that tomorrow this report goes forward and West Gray Council was to say that they went with option 1. Does the current agreement, it's that all 3 municipalities have to agree to the sale?
Yes, we're all owners, so it's like, if you got a house, or even let's use a better example, an estate sale, and you got 4 siblings and 3 say yes and 1 says no, it doesn't go through. So that's what my interpretation would be. The whole idea of the sale based on the way we pay, that's not realistic, because we're equal owners. We each own 33% of the facility. Okay.
Yes, it is confusing. We do need to update the agreement.
Yeah.
Like before anything happens, right? Before a sale goes through, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to talk from experience. I mean, I knew absolutely nothing about the airport till I was appointed as your rep. It's been a great learning experience, but I'm just looking at from your perspective, if this decision came up and someone just said yay or nay, and you had no input on a discussion and why we're doing it, I think it wouldn't be fair to you. So that's why I'm suggesting everybody get involved and hear all the same information. And at the end of the day, we make our decision.
Okay, we're in agreement. We'll work on the meeting and, okay. All right, moving on. Item 10 is reports and correspondence for information. The first one, 10.1, is report PB 2923. It's a site plan control agreement, alteration of a stormwater pond. It's from Andrew Wilkin, our Director of Building and Planning and CBO. Andrew?
Thank you, Your Worship. PB 29-23, Naresh Jain of Neat Roll Investments approached the town on August 7th of 2023 with respect to lands he owns at 1074 10th Street. This property is specifically to the east of Mark's Work Warehouse, the stormwater pond on that property. The discussion and suggestions at that time was to revitalize the storm pond, relocate it a little bit more east to allow for a potential buildable site area in future. To be clear, this report and this site plan control agreement is only to relocate the stormwater pond to the east. This agreement did not have any implications in it for a new building. There were brief discussions about potentially what buildings could go in there. The suggestions to date were of commercial type uses that meet the zoning and the official plan currently. We would not anticipate any planning applications to facilitate a new building at a future date. When that is proposed, the council would see a site plan control agreement at that time for what the building itself essentially would be. The owner also indicated that as the storm pond moves to the east, they'd like to incorporate maybe some benches and maybe some sitting areas just to help with the aesthetics of the area and provide a place potentially to sit. There are no financial implications for this report to the town. The link to the strategic plan is safe and reliable infrastructure, strong and vibrant economy, and balanced growth. And the recommendation is that report PB 29-23 site plan control agreement, alterations of stormwater pond on the lands of concession 1 north of Durham Road, part lot 14, registered plan 16R 8209, and parts of 14 to 19 be received for council's information. And I will answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any comments or questions? Andrew, I have a question. Are there any safety issues when you say benches and we say stormwater pond?
Thank you, Your Worship. Not specifically. I mean, you will see stormwater ponds in some areas that have fences around them. That could be a bylaw that a municipality or a county has in place for that. We have not had that in the past here. And I think, we talk about parkland, whether those monies are contributed to trails or parks. I think this is another opportunity to provide that type of parkland without technically designated as parkland space.
Thank you. Okay, so that was for information. 10.2 is report DCS 2123. It's the 2023 investments. It's from Chris Walker, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer. Chris.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is provided once a year as part of our policy FIN 006 regarding investments. And these are the reserve fund monies where they are located and invested. And you remember there's a difference between reserves, which are monies in our bank account, versus the reserve funds that were invested in other locations, GICs, equities, other spots. So there's nothing to discuss other than here's the summary. It's in the chart form. The first one is we have a West Ontario promissory note for over $1.1 million. We receive interest on that on a yearly basis. And we receive about $46,765. That just goes to our general coffers to offset our expenses on our levy. The next one is our West Ontario shares. I put down their yearly interest. It's actually a yearly dividend. Thank you, Mayor Sue, for bringing that to my attention. And this has been applied to town revenues again, just on a yearly basis. We had budgeted 110,000 in 2023. We did only receive 60,400. So we are noting that we are putting in for 2024 in our budget, 60,400 versus the 110. So that will be about $49,600 less, which will be an impact of just over 0.5% on our levy. All these impacts on levy. Number 3 and number 4 are investments in our cemetery care and maintenance and trust funds, as well as our stone care trust funds. Anything to do with cemetery, we can only use the interest, so that 350,000 invested in there is money that we cannot touch. We can only use the interest on that. So we do have a fair bit of interest on those. We will be taking money out in the 300,000 care and maintenance, because we are looking at doing cemetery software as well as the columbarium that's going to be required. The other one, number 5, one investments. This is $1 million that's been invested. These 3 equities were invested back in 2017. So about the 6 years worth of interest is sitting in there. So most of that $1 million is for our water wastewater. The next one is we have an actual separate bank account just strictly for reserve funds, where we put in the money for the TCA reserve, the investing in Hanover Fund, any gas tax that we receive, not for SMART, the actual town gas tax, where we put it in there. And right now there's over 4,171,000 in there. And then we have 3 GICs. Again, these are monies that would have been sitting in our Meridian Reserve Fund bank account, and we invest them as the interest rates go up and up. So we were able to get some at 5.26, 5.93, and another one at 6. Our bank account itself is basically prime less 1.55%. So last I looked, which was last week, the prime rate is 7.70, which means we are getting 6.15 on our actual bank account. So that's pretty good investments for us there. So this link to strategic plan is for open and responsible government. And this is just a report that's been provided, DCS 21-23, regarding our 2023 investments that are received for council's information. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Any comments or questions? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. And this is just what I'm trying to understand better. And this is our West Stereo shares, where it says they're worth 2,756,000 and change. They've been at that number for a long time. And how do we ever really know what they're worth? Because I would have to think that value changes over the years. And how do we know what they're actually worth? Because basically we're getting 2% on that investment right now. How do we know?
Through your worship, I remember it was maybe 7 years ago when Mr. Hunt was here from BDO, and he mentions this is the number that we have to put on the balance sheet at the time that it's been there. The only way you can actually get that to change is if you actually have an assessment done. And so West Area would have to go out, take a look at all their shares and say that these shares are actually worth, say, $4 million or whatever. At that point, then you could put it and update it on your balance sheet.
So who would have to request that?
Oh, we'd have to go through the mayor. Whoever our representative is on West Area would have to ask them to do that.
And I've had my microphone on the whole time and nobody said, hey, Lindsay. Yes, I would have to bring that up at a West Area board meeting to see if they'd be willing to go ahead and initiate that. They would come back with RFPs, I would imagine, right? For the valuation to see what that cost would be.
Correct. And none of those, that 2.7 million is earmarked for anything in particular, not water, wastewater, or anything. That's just, here's our shares that we have, and we just basically get dividends on it. So if that was money that you decided to sell all your shares, then that would go into the coffers of the town to no specific area.
And I guess that's really where I'm coming from, is if they're worth actually 5 million, but we're only getting $60,000, you could, invest the exact 2.7 as a reserve somewhere that basically doesn't hurt you. And you could take the other 2.5 million and invest it at the 6% that we're seeing. So it's just an opportunity. And there's maybe good reasons that it doesn't work for us, but it's a question I feel needs to be asked, and we should look into it.
It is my understanding that all the municipalities are in the exact same spot, because all the shares are based on the original value when we came together in 2000, 2001, around there. when it became Westario, because at that point you could take out shares if you wanted to, but it would be based on what they were at that time, and that's what you received. If you leave the shares in, you keep getting the dividends on it. The more you take out, the less your dividends are going to be. So you have to look at, is it worth $60,000 a year? Maybe it is. If it's worth $5 million now and you take it all out, that's a good 10 years worth, pretty well close to there.
And there is quite a process if you want to sell these shares. Like you can't go out to market. You have to go to the Westario shareholders and they have to purchase or decide whether they want to purchase. And they may say no, they may say yes, but it's not an easy thing just to divest yourself of those shares. But I can ask if they would consider it and find out what the cost. I think the cost will determine whether they want to move ahead with it. So.
I appreciate that. Just it's something I would like to have just more information on so that we are making better decisions going forward. So thank you.
There I am again. You're not telling me I'm leaving that on. You need to wave at me. Okay, yes, so noted. That's 10.2. So we'll move on to 10.3. There was no further questions on the investments. Okay. 10.3 is a letter from the Minister of Infrastructure. We did have a delegation at AMO. This is a follow-up regarding that. We presented we didn't ask for funding for water and wastewater infrastructure. We just wanted them to know that we were here and will be asking. So the minister is saying she understands there's concerns, and we're nearing capacity, and they do not currently have any funding on their ICP, the Canada Infrastructure Program, but did recommend that there are other ways, which includes OSIF, and Chris would know all about this, Ontario Infrastructure Bank, and the Ontario Infrastructure Loan Program. So that's just a nice letter acknowledging we were a delegation there. So Chris will be doing her magic when we're looking for that 45 million.
Well, the OSIP is always earmarked for our projects for roads. So it's already there. And the 2024 figure for OSIP is 498,000. So that's already earmarked for one of our infrastructure projects. We tended to put it towards more on taxes than we would on the wastewater rate piece. And the OI, Ontario Infrastructure construction rate borrowing is at 5.05%. And they have 5 to 25 year terms, and they're all in the high fives right now. So they're no better than going to a bank.
Right. Okay, item 10.4 is the Saugeen Municipal Airport meeting minutes and a special meeting. Do you have anything further to say, Councillor Hawking?
I was just going to say, you don't want to hear from me again. Yeah, that's what it was. It was a regular meeting on November the 8th, and then the special meeting was, the staff and input on economic development. I guess in our regular meeting, the only thing I'd like to make reference to is we finally got our bylaw cleared up with Suquiba Raham. She was a lawyer that was hired almost 18 months ago, so it's been an arduous process. Then I made reference to the Brockton report. I mean, it's all been discussed before, so I'm open to any questions, though.
Thank you. Any further questions for Councillor Hawking?
Nobody.
Nobody. All right. 10.5 is the Grey County Council highlights from November 23rd. Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship. At that meeting, we had Ray Robertson in attendance, and he gave us the opportunity to congratulate him on his induction into the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. He is an area farmer that has dedicated his life to advancing agriculture, and was great to see him get this recognition on a national level. The county approved funding for the Women's Center Grey Bruce in the amount of $26,000. We received the letter from the town of Hanover asking that the county consider extending the CIP funding in the upcoming budget. Thank you, Mayor Sue, for sending that. We approved the purchase of a new budgeting software program, which will help manage the asset management program as well as allowing them to better planning for moving into a 10-year budget projections. We received a report on updated development charges, residential units, and this is Grey County only. Residential units will be $9,789 per unit, row houses $6,759 per unit, and apartments $5,629 per unit. That reflects a 6.6% increase over the 2023 numbers. Received an update from the Provincial Offences Court. In our case here, Grey County operates both the courthouse in Owen Sound and in Walkerton under an agreement that they have with Bruce County. Provincial Offences Act back in 2001 transferred most ticket offenses under Part 1 to be handled at this level of court. And Part 1 includes things like Highway Traffic Act, municipal bylaws, compulsory auto insurance, dog owners liability, building code, trespass, and liquor license act. And an interesting statistic that was given to us is that about 55% of fines end up in default and at a collections agency. So as of September 2023, there were 24,625 fines on record as unpaid, totaling in almost $12.5 million of outstanding debt there. So, and that's a cumulative total. That's not just 2023. So just to clarify that. They have a program that helps to reduce the court backlog. It's called the Early Resolution Day, which allows for prosecution and defense to come together and make an agreement before an actual court date. And they do this through a virtual means for the most part. Staff estimates that the court will generate just over $200,000 for the county in 2023, based on the fines they collect and all those good things. So it is actually a revenue generator. And both courts continue to offer in-person and virtual attendance to deal with most offenses. The other item we had was the warden's closing address, where he highlighted the events of the past year with a focus on working together for a better community being the key to his message. And those are my highlights.
Very good. Mine would have been a lot shorter. I'm looking, I thought, I don't have all that in because I didn't know, I forgot who was going to highlight. So I thought I better be prepared, but mine was a lot shorter. So that was very good. So, all right. Item 11 is planning and other meetings. All of our committee meetings and board meetings are listed on the agenda and on our website, with the exception of one. The Committee of Adjustments is, there's a meeting going to be held on December 14th at 4 p.m. It is a virtual meeting, and the details are on the website. I do remember it's on 11th Avenue, no, 10th Avenue, but I don't remember the other one. Andrew?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's two minor variance hearings, one at 1115 7th Ave. It's for the increase of a secondary detached unit square footage. And you're correct, 587 10th Ave is a front and side yard setback minor revision.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Item 12, dates to remember and announcements. The next regular council meeting is December 18th at 4 p.m. Our budget meeting is Monday, January 29th at 4 p.m. And the municipal office will be closed December 25th, 26th, 27th, and January 1st. And at this time, I will ask, are there any notices of motion? Deputy Mayor Dickert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure this is a notice of motion. I had a conversation with Chatsworth Mayor Mackey, and apparently one of the practices they have in their meetings is they keep a running sheet of things that have been approved through the year, and they can make reference to it. And this kind of keeps everybody more informed and in tune with what maybe we've approved back in January, and we haven't maybe heard something about it in October, and it kind of keeps us reminded of those things. So I don't have all the details on it, but going forward, like I said, I'm not sure if it's a notice of motion as much as just something that we maybe work with staff to see if we can implement something of that nature. So I don't know how you want to handle that. I'll look to Vicky for that, I guess.
Yeah, that is definitely something we could look into doing. I could discuss it with the CAO clerk or deputy clerk for Chatsworth.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments for notices of motion? Seeing none, we do not have a closed meeting, and I need a mover and seconder to adjourn at 6 p.m. Councillor Sacco and Deputy Mayor Dickert. We are, all in favor? That's carried. We are adjourned. Thank you.